This is Decoded, AI for everyone. The podcast that makes sense of artificial intelligence. Not just in your pocket, but in your work, your choices, your creativity, and your everyday life.
I'm Joel Leslie. I work in AI research, AI governance, AI cybersecurity, and AI real-world adoption, helping organisations better understand how to use these systems safely, effectively, and without creating future risk. On this show, I take those ideas and bring them back to everyday life, so AI feels less confusing, less distant, and a lot more useful for everyone.
Y equals x squared minus 3. Y equals a sine x plus b.
I don't get what it's meant to look like.
That moment tells us something important about AI and learning. Not the usual story, not the lazy story about students cheating, not the panic that every assignment is now meaningless. Something more interesting. AI can give us answers too quickly. That is a real problem. But AI can also make ideas visible in ways that traditional learning often could not. It can turn symbols into shapes, text into examples, confusion into questions, a wrong answer into a diagnosis, a lecture into a conversation. So the question is not whether AI belongs in learning. It already does. The better question is what kind of learning it creates. Because getting the answer is not the same as learning, and understanding something is not the same as recognizing an explanation when it is placed in front of you. This is Decoded, AI for everyone. I'm Joel Leslie, and this is Season 4, Applied Intelligence. In the last episode, we looked at scams. Not the old scams, not the badly written email with a suspicious link, the new scam. The one that sounds familiar, the one that uses context, voice, urgency, and trust. Today, we move from what AI can imitate to what AI can teach. And the same tension appears again. AI can make things easier, but easier is not always better. Sometimes, easier means more accessible. Sometimes, easier means less effort. Sometimes, easier means the hard part disappeared before your brain had a chance to do it. That is the line we need to understand, because AI may become one of the most powerful learning tools we have ever had, but only if we stop treating learning as the same thing as receiving an answer. Most public conversation about AI and learning gets stuck in one place. Students are using ChatGPT to cheat. That matters. Of course it matters. Schools, universities, and workplaces need to know whether people understand what they submit. Assessment matters. Original work matters. Trust matters. But if that is the only conversation we have, we miss the much larger shift. AI is not only changing how students complete assignments, it is changing how people encounter knowledge, how they ask questions, how they practice, recover from confusion, and how they learn at work, how they retrain and understand a concept that previously felt out of reach. The cheating question is real, but it is not big enough, because the deeper issue is not whether AI gives people answers. The deeper issue is whether AI helps people build capability. There is a difference. An answer can be copied. Capability has to be built. Think about that digital board again. A teacher writes an equation. The board turns it into a graph. Suddenly, the student does not have to hold the whole abstraction in their head. They can see it. A parabola is no longer just a formula. It has a shape. A sine wave is no longer just a line of symbols. It moves. A variable is no longer something to memorize. It changes the behavior of the thing on the screen. That is powerful. Because a lot of learning is translation. A teacher translates a concept into language. A diagram translates it into space. An example translates it into experience. A good question translates confusion into a path forward. AI can help with that. It can show the same idea 5 different ways. It can explain a concept through a graph, a story, a metaphor, a worked example, a simulation, a quiz, or a real-world scenario. It can slow down, speed up. It can change level, and it can notice where someone is stuck. That is not cheating. That is access. And for many learners, that could be life-changing. The student who never understood algebra because it stayed abstract. The worker who avoided data because spreadsheets felt intimidating. Or the nurse learning a new clinical system. And the manager trying to understand a cybersecurity risk. The parent trying to help a child with homework they barely remember themselves. And the adult retraining after 20 years in another industry. AI can make learning more immediate, more visual, more personal, more patient, more interactive. That is the opportunity. But there is a trap. The trap is that AI is very good at sounding clear. Ask it to explain something, and it will. Ask it to summarize a topic, and it will. Ask it to simplify a report, and it will. And ask it for the key points, and there they are. Fast, polished, confident, readable. And that can feel like learning. You read the summary and nod. You recognize the terms. You follow the explanation. You feel across it. But then the screen closes. Someone asks, "Can you explain that back to me?" And suddenly the confidence disappears. That is the difference between recognition and recall. Recognition is when something makes sense while you are looking at it. Recall is when you can produce the idea yourself. Recognition feels easier. Recall is harder. But recall is where learning starts to become yours. This matters for students, but it also matters for adults. A worker asks AI to summarize a new policy. A manager asks it to explain an emerging technology. A board member asks for a briefing on cyber risk. A team leader asks for the key points from a report. The output is good. The language is clear. The person feels informed. Then, in a meeting, someone asks one follow-up question, and the difference becomes obvious. They read the answer. They did not learn the idea. That is the quiet risk. AI can make us fluent in the feeling of understanding without building the strength of understanding. There is a phrase worth holding on to here. Fluency is not mastery. A smooth explanation can create false confidence. A clean summary can hide the gaps. A well-written answer can make us feel smarter than we are. That is not because people are lazy. It is because the human brain likes clarity. When something is presented neatly, we tend to believe we understand it better. AI is very good at neatness. It can remove mess. It can remove uncertainty. It can remove the awkward part where you struggle to form the idea yourself. But sometimes the awkward part is the learning, the pause, the attempt, and the mistake. The moment you try to explain it and realize you cannot. The moment you retrieve it from memory. The moment you connect it to something else. And that moment you ask, wait, why does that happen? That is not wasted time. That is the work. And if AI removes all of it, we may become faster at producing answers and weaker at building understanding. That is the risk. Not that AI explains too much, but that it explains too early. This is where the conversation often becomes too simple. People say, students should struggle. They should do the work. They should not take shortcuts. There is truth in that. But we need to be careful. Not all struggle is useful. Some struggle is just bad design. A student who cannot see the graph in their head may not need more suffering. They may need a better representation. A worker who does not understand a new system may not need a 50-page manual. They may need an interactive explanation. A learner who keeps getting something wrong may not need to be told to try harder. They may need feedback that identifies the actual gap. So the goal is not to preserve difficulty for its own sake. The goal is to preserve active thinking. That is different. Good learning has effort, but it also has support. The best teachers do not simply hand over answers. They create conditions where the learner has to think. They ask questions, test assumptions. They wait. They reframe. And they give a hint. They show a different example. They make the invisible visible. AI can do some of that, but only if we use it that way. If we ask AI for an answer, we get an answer. If we ask AI to teach, it may still explain too much. But if we ask AI to make us think, we change the relationship. That is where the useful habit begins. The better use of AI in learning is not, explain this to me. It is, find out what I understand first. That is the difference between an answer machine and a learning machine. An answer machine delivers. A learning machine diagnoses. It asks what you already know. It tests your explanation, gives you a small challenge, and spots the missing step. It changes the example, and it makes you retrieve the idea. It does not just tell you what the answer is. It helps you discover where the gap is. Imagine a student learning algebra. Instead of asking, explain quadratic equations, they ask me 3 questions to see what I understand about quadratic equations. Do not explain yet. Now consider a manager learning AI governance. And instead of asking, summarize the AI policy, they might ask, test whether I can explain the purpose of this policy in plain English. Then show me what I missed. An employee learning a new software system. Instead of asking, give me the steps, they would be better to ask, give me a scenario and ask me what I would do next. That is not a tutorial trick. It is a learning principle. You have to retrieve. You have to attempt. You have to be tested gently enough to keep going, but honestly enough to find the gap. AI can be good at that. It can quiz without judgment. It can repeat without frustration. It can adapt without embarrassment. And it can explain again in a different way. That is why the future of learning with AI is not just faster answers. It is more responsive practice. This is not only about school. In fact, the bigger shift may be workplace learning. Most adults are constantly learning, but they do not always call it learning. They call it onboarding. New systems, policies, tools, and regulations. New risks, reports, and a new strategy. New data, a new language. A workplace can change faster than people can absorb. AI can help with all of it. But the same trap appears. A team can use AI to summarize everything and still not build capability. They can generate briefings, learning packs, meeting notes, and procedure guides. They can produce more learning material than anyone has time to learn. That is not capability. That is content. Capability is what someone can do after the document disappears. Can they explain the decision? Can they recognize the risk, apply the process? Can they spot the exception, teach it to someone else? And can they make a judgment without copying the answer? That is where AI should be used. Not only to produce learning materials, to create practice, to create scenarios, to test recall, to surface confusion, and to support people while they build judgment. Because in a world changing this quickly, organizations do not just need more information. They need people who can learn faster without becoming shallow. Before asking AI to explain more, ask it to test you first. Not because explanations are bad, but because testing shows you where the explanation needs to land. The simple version is, quiz me first, find the gap, then explain only what I am missing. That one shift changes the learning process. It slows the answer down. It brings your brain into the loop. It makes AI less like a vending machine and more like a coach. You can use it with almost anything. A student can use it before studying a topic. A professional can use it before reading a briefing. A team can use it before training on a new process. A leader can use it before assuming they understand a risk. The point is not the prompt. The point is the posture. Do not let AI go first every time. Let your brain try first. Then let AI show you what needs work. That is learning. Getting the answer is not learning. It may be useful, saves time, and it may help you start. But the answer is not the lesson. The lesson is what remains when the answer is gone. Can you explain it? Can you apply it? Question it? Can you use it in a new situation? Can you notice when it does not fit? That is understanding. AI can weaken that if we use it only to skip ahead. But AI can strengthen it if we use it to make ideas visible, create better practice, diagnose gaps, and keep us active in the process. That is the version of AI and learning worth paying attention to. Not just cheating, not just shortcuts, not just summaries. A new kind of tutor, visualizer, and a new kind of practice partner. A system that can make learning more personal, more immediate, and more interactive than many people have ever experienced. But only if we remember the basic truth. The answer is not the lesson. If you want the sources and examples from this episode, including links on AI and learning, visualization, retrieval practice, and practical ways to use AI as a tutor rather than an answer machine, they are in the show notes and at decoded-podcast.com/resources/S4E9. And for broader AI tools, practical guides, and safe use resources, visit promptengineeringcookbook.com. In the next episode, we move from learning to the model itself. Because AI systems are no longer just software products. They are becoming strategic assets. And that changes what security means. That is next time on Decoded, AI for everyone. Until then, stay aware, stay curious, and stay human. I'm Joel Leslie. Thanks for listening.